Hey, everybody.
Hi, everyone.
Welcome to another episode of KRTD Media News, soon to be known as Kerberos Media News. If anybody, in case anybody noticed, just recently on our Twitter page, we announced the formation of a new LLC. So, and that will be Kerberos Media Productions LLC. So you're going to see some of the design elements in the like overlays and in the slide backgrounds will reflect some of the new design change around this, but we are still kind of mixing and matching old new and old elements here. So, but it looks cool. I love the
looking
intro.
Good. I mean, I like the background. It's nice.
Yeah,
I like the old one as well. I just
it's pretty similar. We're changing colors. So it's work in progress, and I think it's coming along nicely. Right. So let me go ahead and get my screen in here. And share system audio.
I know it took me a while to figure it out yesterday.
Yeah, it's a little bit of a process. There we go. Boom. Kerberos Media News for Tuesday, February 15th, 2022. So that's the new logo that Jimmy, who is now our creative director for the LLC, she designed that new logo, and I think it looks fantastic. Beautiful. Yeah. Yep. All right. So today, the stories that we're going to be covering. So one of the things that's not really being talked about a whole lot is the risk of nuclear disaster in Ukraine. With a looming potential Russian invasion. Ukraine has a lot of nuclear plants. And even the most careful war is not good in a situation like that. We're also going to be talking about the ongoing work to re-engineer our supply chains, as we've seen with all the breakdowns in the supply chain thus far. People rising prices, people having trouble getting things that they need, businesses having trouble getting the materials that they need to produce. So we're going to be talking about an article covering the solutions for that. Mm-hmm. Also, Postmaster DeJoy chooses fossil fuel mail trucks instead of the electric for the U.S. postal fleet, which just seems like such a backwards decision for the times.
It's nuts. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So we'll get into that. And also a recent development around the IRS was planning on using facial recognition technology for as a means of allowing people to access their online information through the IRS. That has now been reversed, and we'll talk about why. All right.
Yeah. So yes, this is kind of like I hate to say this, but right up in my alley because I've been an anti-nuke activist for several years. Was inspired by Fukushima, but I'm from Hiroshima partially, so that's kind of my personal legacy. So I just want to give a shout out. This story was provided by Libby Halevi, a personal friend of mine, but she is a super dedicated anti-nuclear activist. She has started this podcast, Nuclear Hot Seat, after Fukushima, she's been doing it every week without fail for 10 plus years.
Wow.
And she's probably one of the most informed people globally about nukes, what's going on globally around and issues of nuclear. So yeah, so she provided the story last week about Ukraine and the fact that there are 15 nuclear reactors in that nation and how
That's
dangerous it would be to start a war there. That's okay. So anywhere in the world, wars are not advisable. Don't get me wrong, but Ukraine is really not the place to do it. Yeah. So
yeah, definitely not. And so actually, I grabbed a little snippet from the podcast episode that she did here, and let me know right away if you can hear this.
One might be tempted to think, well, at least Ukraine doesn't have nuclear weapons. But wait. When one considers that there are 15 nuclear power reactors in Ukraine, including 6 at a facility only 120 miles away from where Russia is amassing its forces, that might lead you to think, oops. And then, when a genuine expert on nuclear matters tells you,
the multiplication of nuclear power plants has been given little public consideration in terms of their vulnerability in times of war. And that's what we have, a country crowded with nuclear power plants. If there's war, there's going to be a big war in the Ukraine, probably the biggest war in Europe since World War II. And those 15 nuclear power plants in Ukraine are going to be one way or the other involved in the conflict. The threat is real. Even a desultory Russian incursion into eastern Ukraine is likely to expose reactors and the uncertainty of a ground combat environment. The world has little experience with reactors in a war zone. Talks about the Ukraine being one of the most radioactive places on Earth. Indeed, the Ukraine is where the Chernobyl nuclear plant was. Now it's in the middle of an exclusion zone, highly radioactive area. And here the New York Times in its first paragraph notes that if there is an invasion by Russia into Ukraine, the shortest path lies going through the Chernobyl exclusion zone. So we're talking about, as aerospace and defense says, a war that could, because of all these nuclear power plants, if there's an exchange of fire and nuclear power plants are hit, you're talking about huge destruction, which could impact not only the Ukraine, but like Chernobyl did, all of Europe and beyond.
So,
yeah, it's a scary stuff. I mean, yeah, and as an anti-nuclear activist, it always like baffles my mind. I mean, blows my mind that it's just really not enough is talked about. Yeah, I think there's a great effort to conceal, the reality of like how not only like Ukraine situation, but how we are all in some kind of danger, in terms of nuclear, wherever we are, really. But
really, so what is then? My curiosity is, you say there's a kind of a cover up, basically, of how dangerous it is. Lately, it seems like I've been hearing a lot of advocacy for new nuclear that's supposed to be safer and nothing like the old technology. And people often bring it up when in opposition to like say the folks who are advocating for renewable energy such as wind, solar, they like to cast those sorts of energy as being unsustainable, and that the new safe nuclear is supposed to be the future. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, okay. So three things. I have three things to say about that. One, yeah, okay. So there's been a lot of predictions, forecasts about this new technology, or there are multiple technologies or new technologies in terms of like new kind of power, nuclear power generation, utilizing a new kind of technology, and also like how to deal with the waste, right? Okay, but at this point, these are all prediction and forecast. I'm not ruling out there won't be a technology to safely deal with nuclear, but at this point, though, at least, it's all predictions and forecasts. It's not real. It's not in operation, and you just really don't know. And actually, as an anti-nuclear activist, I'll actually bet that there's nothing safe. Nuclear industry people have been saying that for years and years and years. Yeah, it's perfectly safe, but look what has happened. 3 Mile Island, Chernobyl, Fukushima. There's no safety. There's no ultimate safety. And here's the thing. So for example, Fukushima, a lot of people, especially outside of Japan, think that Fukushima is dealt with and done with. No, because we meaning Japanese government, hasn't even started decommissioning the plant because they don't know how, frankly. That's the scary thing, Sam. They do not know how to decommission that plant safely. They can't do it. So it's sitting there for 10 plus years, right? So what I'm trying to say though, yeah, so okay, there's no safety, no ultimate safety. And when an accident happens, it's irreversible. It's irreversible. Okay, so that's one. Two, so waste. I talked about waste. It just really drives me crazy when people start to talk about power generation part and say, oh, this new technology can, generate power safely and cleanly, right? And I'm like, okay, what about the waste though? Yeah. Where does it go? That thing, we can't, with the current technology, you can't break it down. It has to be dumped somewhere. And, as you know, there's been a huge debate in this country as well that, like, okay, so where to dump it, right? And of course, like, nobody wants that in their neighborhood, So for as long as the issue of the waste is not resolved, I wouldn't support nuclear power generation. No. And I guess I forgot the third. I was gonna say the third thing, but anyway, yeah. But I said enough, I think, for now.
All right. So here's a map. Oh, let me bring it back on the screen. So here's a map showing where all of the reactors are in Ukraine. As I said, 15 reactors in 4 locations. And they said a number of these are, what they say, within 100 or within 150 miles from where the Russian troops are staged, which is, here's the thing, okay? Here's what I found. This article when I was researching, okay, and this is the counter view. This is the dismissive reporting of the risks of this conflict, of the nuclear risks. Okay, they're saying that most of Ukraine's nuclear reactors are not operating, so it's no big deal anyway. But not operating doesn't mean not dangerous.
Okay, so I shouldn't laugh, but that's like what baffles me. Another thing that baffles me, people think that, or many people think that, not everyone, but many people think that, nuclear reactors not in operation are safe? No, because as long as there's a fuel in there, first of all, you have to be cooling these fuels all the time. That's why, that Fukushima, the issue of contaminated water, it's been in the news, right? Because Japan is going to release that water in 2023, spring of 2023. Right now, it's planned. So that water, all these like tons and tons of water, is created because there's a cooling system attached to it, and we have to be cooling that plant. It's not in operation, but we have to be constantly cooling that, so that it won't reach the level to explode, right?
Right.
So I mean, it's not, nuclear reactors not in operation are not safe. We have to be maintaining that.
So their second point in this article, I won't link the article because I don't want to give them any extra clicks, but Russia will not attack Ukrainian nuclear reactors. Oh yeah, they'll just, they'll completely ignore, one of the most fundamental aspects of warfare, which is taking out the infrastructure and taking out the ability for a nation to produce, because that's ultimately what, going after power sources in warfare is it's common because if you destroy a nation's ability to produce, which power is obviously needed for that, that severely limits the ability for them to continue waging war. So and what they said in the reason for this is that, well, because one of the stipulations for Russia Russia helped Ukraine get that power as a stipulation for Ukraine giving up its nuclear weapons, and that they wouldn't want to, that because of that old relationship, that they wouldn't dare bomb any, a nuclear reactor. Okay, that's a claim that they're trying to go with. I don't see that holding much water, no pun intended. And three, they said less chance for accidentally being bombed. Now this is
once again, I mean, okay, so like those military defense technology people always talk about the technology, drone technology nowadays can pinpoint exactly where you're bombing, right? But I mean, in the past, how many times we've heard that, oh, whoops, we accidentally bombed a civilian facility, or some
very
village,
recently,
right?
still happens.
Yeah,
it still happens quite a bit.
Right, exactly.
It happened a lot under Bush. It happened even more under Obama. And Trump actually, I think, he ramped it up even more for the time that, had he finished in eight years, he probably would have even eclipsed Obama. But I'm not entirely sure. But I know he didn't. We didn't end it, and we didn't end it under Biden either. It's less under Biden, but it's not any real. It's not. We're still hitting headlines, talking about bombs that are taking out entire families, where there were no terrorists even involved. So it's like, and this is commonplace. Like, you can't, the collateral damage is a term that exists for a reason. Barring some like sinister ulterior motives, these things, when civilian targets get hit, like, it's not exactly going to be, it's not, even if it's an accident, it doesn't make it any less deadly. And here was another article that I found that where they kind of dismantled. It wasn't actually related to the other article I found, but it actually dismantled some of the points that they were making. So they were saying, one of the points that other article made, that they said that, after all, Israel bombed some plants that were in Iraq, and nothing bad happened then. I mean, that's literally the argument that they were making, was like, nothing bad happened. It was bombed, it was bombarded, artillery and bombs and whatever, and nothing bad happened. So, well, here it says, given Chernobyl's legacy, one might think Russia would shun attacks on operating reactors, and avoidance is indeed the historic norm. True, Israel has attacked Syrian and Iraqi suspected nuclear weapons plants, and Iraq bombarded 2 reactors in, Bashir, Iran during the 1980s war. But in all those cases, the plants were still under construction. So, the reason there wasn't some catastrophic nuclear meltdown was because there was likely not even fuel at those locations yet. Is a reactor strike a bridge too far for Putin to cross? Russia's combat behavior since the breakup of the Soviet Union gives cause for concern, as does our own. And in the Afghan, Chechen and Syrian wars, Russian forces acted with scant regard for conventional boundaries, as did we. There are the vagrancies of war. Generally, bad stuff happens. As we say, collateral damage. Combatants make mistakes. Soldiers in the field ignore restraints. Things happen. You can't just say you're going to go and invade a country that is home to 15 nuclear reactors and say that, oh, it's okay, nothing bad will happen. We'll be careful.
Right. Yeah, so, I just want to point out 2 things here. One is actually what I forgot to say earlier, but so I don't want to be an alarmist, but I have to say this. In wartime or peacetime, nuclear reactors are bound to have accidents, big or small, or big and small, I should say. And I've been observing news like in Japan and also in the United States. And so most small leaks are not reported. We don't know about it. We, general public, don't know about it. And even when it is reported, they always say, there's no danger to people, who are living around the plant. That's like, they always say that.
Yeah.
But how do you know that is the thing? I mean, radiation, when it leaks, and I mean, depending on the amount of leak, it is going to affect you. It's not the danger. It's not, you can't see it, so you don't feel it. You don't know if it's there. But if it's like, if it leaks in a certain amount, and if you are exposed to it, it will have an effect on you, because that's what radiation does. So that's one thing. And also, in this on this podcast, I don't remember who talked about it, but there's been a talk of nuclear reactors, nuclear power plants being a target of act of terrorism for years and years and years, in this country and also in Japan as well, because it's an easy target. Frankly, it's a very easy target. It's there. I mean, well, industry people say it's guarded. Yeah, it is, but it's not. Again, it's not perfect. And also, when it's a for-profit business, as they cut corners.
Oh yeah.
So the Fukushima accident happened because they cut corners. They didn't safeguard the plant, against the possible and very probable danger of tsunami. So I mean, yeah, terrorists can easily attack nuclear power plant. So we all have to keep in mind that okay, we live in this country. It's in a relatively peacetime. We are safe. I don't actually believe that as long as there is nuclear power plant, nuclear reactors, yeah, there is a potential danger.
Absolutely, and is one last point on the dangers of warfare. A case in point was the March 26, 2017 bombing of the Islamic State-held Tabqa Dam in Syria, standing 18 stories high and holding back a 25-mile-long reservoir on the Euphrates River. The dam's destruction would have drowned tens of thousands of innocent people downstream, yet violating strict no-strike orders and bypassing safeguards, U.S. airmen struck it anyway. Dumb luck saved the day. Again, the bunker-busting bomb failed to detonate. So,
Yeah.
I mean, this is, we're talking could be serious implications for Europe and beyond, as the expert said. Let's see.
Before we move on to the next news, I just want to give a shout out to Libby once again. So if you are curious about any nuclear stuff, Nuclear Hot Seat is her show. Libby Halevi, check it out.
Oh, yeah. Yep. Okay, let's see. The American Prospect did a nice article on re-engineering our supply chains. So this is kind of covering, how not only climate change or not only coronavirus, sorry, but also climate change has really been drawing attention to the ways that our supply chains are breaking down around the world and all the risks. Their subtitle is "It's Time for a Coherent National Logistics System, Regulating and Coordinating What Has Been Privatized." So this is so risks to the supply chain established through decades of perverse policy decision made by both parties will always be with us unless there's a course correction. The catalyst now is the strong transmissibility of the Omicron variant, creating labor shortages and local lockdowns that hinder production and transportation. Okay, which are problems that I think everybody has been able to identify by now and a lot of people talk about. But what isn't really talked about much is, as I point out here, because of how we've built our supply chain, virtually any well-timed disruption can cut off a vital source of components or finished goods. It's an engineering flaw where single points of failure cascade all the way to store shelves. So this is basically outlining a problem with the way private for-profit interests have been able to completely, in the sake of making profits, in the sake of things being as profitable as possible for them, we've put a lot of our valuable infrastructure for maintaining a functioning society at risk. And as we've seen, like with coronavirus and with climate change, it doesn't take much. It doesn't take much. Like, I think empty shelves are becoming the norm. Yeah. Every time I go into the store, there's some product or another that I can't get anymore that I used to be able to get or whatever. And those are all minor inconveniences compared to, when we're talking, like hospitals and such not being able to get the things that they need. Mm-hmm. We have national security issues because we can't get enough semiconductors. There's widespread effects.
Yep.
So you can Sorry, go ahead.
No. You were gonna click on the next slide, right? I mean, I think
Yeah.
yeah.
So you can make a credible argument that the extreme weather drove more supply chain issues last year than COVID. Not only can flooding, hurricanes, and cold snaps and droughts reduce, and wildfires, by the way, reduce commodity supplies through crop spoiling or lumber going ablaze, but they can generate power outages that snarl production or storm surges that shutter ports and trucks. And these will only grow in frequency and intensity as the climate heats up. Okay, so these are issues that we're seeing year after year, and they're getting worse. Okay, they're getting worse because, despite activists shouting from the rooftops for how many decades now that climate change is upon us, it's changing, it's forcing us to change how we live, and we're not keeping up.
Yeah, unfortunately, and yeah, I mean, I think we all are aware, hopefully, that we are in a time of great correction, right? I mean, we really have to change the way, as you said, the way we live, but also like the way a lot of industries are structured. So I think, okay, so I think next slide is gonna touch on this, like next few slides. But I mean, globalization, I mean, so-called globalization have worked to a certain extent till now. I mean, I have a lot to say about that. I don't think it worked perfectly. Actually, it produced a lot of problems, but it kind of worked, to some extent. So, like, companies were shipping out, like, manufacturing, customer service, whatnot, to overseas, right? Because they can do it cheaper there.
Right.
So that worked to some extent, for some years, but we are at the point, I think, it doesn't work anymore. We have to think differently because of these natural disasters are happening. They say like pandemic will be kind of the norm. I mean, there'll be another pandemic, and so we have to think differently.
Yeah. I mean, it worked. That globalization, it worked in the sense of like it introduced, when people say, well, it brought jobs to the developing world or to the underdeveloped world. I mean, that is true in some regards. Obviously, like, could you say, I mean, and I don't know, I'm not a historian, I'm not an economist, but could you say that some of these developing nations where a lot of our consumer economies, goods and services goods and services, yes, are both being produced. Could you say that they would have had built such, had made such progress in their own economy, without these foreign companies bringing in, their factories and setting up factories and hiring folks? That's probably a conversation to be had, but it's clear to see now that after years and years of this, the way that yes, it's lifted up some folks, but it's also devastated communities throughout the world, throughout the developing world. Like they are on the lowest losing end of our consumer market here. So I have trouble seeing it as a net positive myself.
Yeah, I agree with you. I have a conflicting feelings always, when I talk about globalization, because I see myself as a product of globalization, so to speak. I mean, I was able to come to this country, at age 19, have been fortunate to, create my life here. So, I'm not talking about manufacturing, but it's like, talking about migration. I'm a product of globalization myself. So,
yeah, I mean, of course, there are a lot of ups and downs to global trade for sure. But now we've gotten to this point now where it's like, it's okay. So I get that there's certain raw ingredients that are probably we're not always going to be, not every country is going to be able to find domestically. I mean, you're going to have to import some things, you're not going to completely be able to eliminate global trade, obviously. But there is a growing movement for the domestication of our manufacturing, to try to bring back jobs here for things, for manufacturing these consumer goods. Because right now what we're doing is we're harvesting all the raw materials on one side of the world, and we're sending it all over to the other side of the world to get manufactured, and then shipping it back into consumer driven economies, in countries like the US and throughout Europe, to be consumed, or to be purchased and consumed. So creating all sorts of waste and destruction and pollution all along the way. Whereas if we got back to having more regional supply chains, that where things were made more locally or domestically here, and like within short enough distances that we could move it by rail and trucking systems that operate on electricity, which is the way of the future anyway. It seems like if we really want to actually change or lessen the impact of the impact to the climate from global trade, I don't see how we can do it without domestication of our manufacturing.
I totally agree with you. I have been a big supporter of the idea of localized economy, and which is kind of funny because I've been a business consultant for 21 years before I lost my job in February of last year. And I always helped some large companies, but small to medium companies predominantly. So I really do, I came to believe after studying the several, industries, including logistics and supply chain industries, that, our future belongs to the localized economy.
Right.
Because of a lot of factors, including climate change and all these things that are happening right now. I mean, our economy has been driven by this, insane drive to get bigger. It's been a mantra that the bigger is better. I don't believe that. I think it's time for us to turn back and then think that, okay, maybe we can create, beautiful businesses, beautiful companies who provide goods and services to our local market, and be invested by people who have direct stake in these businesses. So that's what I believe, and that's where the future has to go.
Absolutely, I 100% agree. I think degrowth is something I've been thinking about a lot lately, because I don't know how anybody can't just look around us and see holy shit, we've gone way too far. And the things that we've done, have all been done with, profitability, whatever's cheapest, whatever's easiest, whatever's quickest, whatever's, with almost no thought to sustainability or to the future, or what you're going to be leaving, or people. People. So it is definitely time for a different approach here. So another excerpt from that article there. So in talking about these supply chains, they say the way to solve them is by rebuilding redundancy and resiliency. That means taking down the policy tyrannies that have forced reliance on faraway manufacturing plants, self-interested ocean shipping oligopolies, overwhelmed ports, deregulated trucking and rail systems, and retail giants and middlemen that see these cumulative problems as an opportunity to raise prices well above increased input costs. It means viewing the system as an engineer would, redesigning it for sustainability and strength rather than profits. So, yeah.
Yeah.
In the, I think most people now are aware that, it started as a meme here and there, that, a lot of the inflation that we're experiencing, I think a lot of people are aware now that it's a lot of corporate price gouging.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And so these companies, all these companies that have these giant monopolies, and they control entire segments of the economy, they can just raise their prices pretty much whenever they want.
Mm-hmm.
These companies are making profits, record profits. They're they're pulling in money hand over fist with barely even trying, because they don't have to, because they've already captured so much of the market that they can just sit on their brand and and say, what are you going to do?
Right. Yeah. I mean, well, we probably should be moving on to the next story, but I just, in 2020, or wait, 2020. Yeah, I kind of forgot. Okay, 2020. When I was still employed, and the COVID, started to, be talked about, and we started to, we went into lockdown and all. So for that 1 year, 2020, I was still employed, and I was still a researcher. So looking at the stock market every day, and I'm like, hearing all these reports that they do, the companies do quarterly reports, and they've been saying that they would be saying that, okay, so because of the pandemic, we lost X days of sales, blah blah blah. So they're like appealing how hard it is for them, and then but they turn around and say, oh, our profits increased by 100% and I was sitting there and thinking, oh my god, this is like prime example. It's a demonstration of how the stock market does not reflect the wealth of our or the health of our economy for ordinary people, because ordinary people are suffering, but these corporations and stock market was doing pretty darn well, in fact.
Oh yeah. I mean, I can tell you, like, internally inside these companies, working for these big corporations, and I know this from experience, because I work in one, and a lot of the other laborers that I know who also work in these kinds of companies, these profits, I mean, they're profits. They're going to investors. They're not. This is not money. Like, this is not money that is being spent internally to. I mean, a lot of these places, I mean, the workers feel almost entirely abandoned by their management. Conditions, safety conditions are deteriorating. Cleanliness and maintenance on things has gone way downhill. They don't, it's like, is the barest minimum they can spend to continue making product that people are going to buy, because they have no choice but to buy, your product, is like, it's just, it's getting worse as we go. I'm going to try to run through these real quick, because we do have to get moving on. Now, so some of the other things that the article pointed out, there are some solutions that we're deploying so far. Some are better than others. Dwell fees at ports to keep the cargo moving out and keep it from sitting there. We've also, we've done these pop-up container yards near the ports to free up dock space, and they're going to continue to do more of those. There was also a July executive order from last year that was supposed to be promoting competition in the American economy. Unfortunately, we don't have time today to really get into any of the details on that, like I was hoping I would be able to. But needless to say, we're approaching a year out, and we are still we still have a nearly crippled economy. They're also trying to. They also decided to allow teenagers to to drive these trucks, which is, something I'm pretty well against. The National Labor Relations Board is working on ending the misclassification of workers, drivers, meaning turning them into employees instead of independent contractors, aka gig workers. Okay, giving them more rights, better pay, better benefits, and more better ability to organize labor as well. White House is also targeting some of the corporations that are responsible for the price hikes, but it doesn't seem like they have a whole lot of teeth in what they're doing. And but there's also an FTC study out now that is studying on how big retailers, suppliers, and wholesalers managed their supply chain disruptions, shortages, and the impacts, as though we don't know already. Further things we can do: they can revive the Robinson-Packman Act to ban anti-competitive behaviors like secret supplier deals. In other words, monopolies using their power to buy up all supplier, like raw materials, breaking up dominant firms to break up monopolies, congressional re-regulation of ocean shipping and new regulation on trucking and rail. Better labor rulings could also help truckers and warehouse employees to help them unionize. But most importantly, we need massive infrastructure investment, more than we've already done, much, much more, to improve freight movement. And also, again, we need to revitalize our domestic production, semiconductors being the most obvious example there. Okay, so the Postal Service. So Biden had ordered the Postal Service to that they wanted electric vehicles to be purchased. I think they're talking about 160 some thousand new vehicles for the Postal Service that they're trying to purchase. They want, of course, because it is the way of the future. The Biden administration wanted electric vehicles, but they're now in conflict with Postmaster DeJoy, who still wants us to have fossil fuel based mail trucks. Transportation is the single largest source of global warming emissions from the United States, and the post office once thought they could do something about it. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so with more than 216,000 vehicles, the Postal Service has the largest civilian fleet in the United States, which is huge.
Wow, yeah.
We continue to evaluate, they say, various fuel types and alternative fuel vehicles, including hybrid trucks, hydrogen fuel cell vans, electric step vans, and liquid natural gas delivery vehicles. Honestly, really, electric is the way to go on these. It's the only thing that can really be fully renewable. Mm-hmm. If the source of the electricity is renewable itself. They said transitioning the public or the postal fleet to plug-ins would serve as a springboard for the commercial production of delivery vehicles that could be extended to a wide variety of delivery services across America. So they're saying the Postal Service could function to set a huge trend for the rest of the country here. Mm-hmm. The commercial market would also provide the economic certainty needed by automakers to make the production investments necessary for mass production of plugins. So they're saying they could influence the industry as well, the automaker industry. The plug-in technology is available right now and represents a realistic near-term solution to the serious problems of over-reliance on foreign oil, out-of-control gasoline prices, as well as greenhouse emissions. So, I mean, we could really go to solving a lot, to make a lot of progress to solving the problem of getting off of, I think, hang on a second here. To getting away from these fossil fuel,
Yeah, Sam, I really am very grateful that you found this article and pointed it out to me, because this really completely escaped my radar. But I mean, I found this to be so outrageous. I've done some reading on my own yesterday to prepare for this news, and found an article in Fast Company, which I like. I read that magazine very often. But yeah, I mean, okay, so all the evidence, researchers point out that investing in electric vehicles, especially for USPS, I mean, it's actually no brainer, because their vehicles do not travel long distance.
Right.
It does not have to travel. It just practically travels in the neighborhood, right? I mean, because they just go from from house to house, or apartment complex to apartment complex. So they travel short distance. It's the perfect candidate for electric vehicles. And I know that DeJoy is making a claim that, but it costs too much. I mean, in the long run, all the evidence, all the research, findings point to the fact that it's gonna be a lot of savings, for USPS. So, first of all, we don't know what he's talking about, and second of all, the contract, the company that who got the contract for all these vehicles. So 10%, only 10% will be electric, 90% will be fossil fuel based. But I mean, this company, this contractor has never produced electric vehicles. So, I mean, the technologies, whatever the technologies that they are employing, is just really not to be trusted. And actually, the experts who looked at the proposed design of electric vehicles this company produces, said it's like one of the least efficient electric vehicles that he's ever seen. It's like not
Of
up
course.
to the technology. Yeah, I know, right? I mean,
even the better option. So you got fossil fuel, and then you have but we were looking at getting these electric vehicles, but now we're finding out that even those electric vehicles that they were planning on getting are bogus.
Yeah,
basically
subpar. Yeah,
subpar,
exactly. Yep.
Terrible. Okay, so yeah, leave it to our federal government to continue screwing things up.
Yeah, I know.
I mean, this is, like you said, no brainer. It doesn't, I mean, it seems like this should be such a simple, easy thing to do. Like something like this. I swear to God, I mean, if you put me in an office and you gave me a phone and a contact list of like manufacturers to call, I'm sure I could work out a deal with a legitimate electric or a legitimate automobile manufacturing company to make several 100,000 electric vehicles, and no matter the cost, no matter the upfront cost, because remember, I mean, we're talking about the United States government here, okay? Fully monetarily sovereign, can literally spend whatever it needs to make these programs happen. These upfront costs are not a big deal for the United States government.
Right.
Okay.
And also, so the industry is going there. That's the crazy part.
Yeah.
Like all these companies, UPS, Amazon, I mean, they are all going towards, electric vehicles, right? So, but again, DeJoy, when that was pointed out to him, he says, oh, please, do not apply private companies' standards. They're making billions of profits. Okay, but okay, let's just talk about this. So it's our money being spent on updating USPS vehicles, right? I mean,
Right.
okay, please do not waste our money. I mean, I think it's like there's a huge double standard here. That he is saying that do not please do not apply the standards of these private companies who make lots of profits. But I mean, money saving is very important for our government as well. If we are spending all that kind of money, and I think we have to hold them accountable for the money that they spend. What they're spending on. So.
Yeah, it is our money. I mean, it may be technically unlimited money, but it is still our money. It is still the public purse. It is still the public funds. And what pisses me off the most about this is that the possibility, and sorry about that, the possibility of that transition happening to the nation's largest vehicle fleet was, in a word, intolerable to the morbidly rich right-wingers who'd made, this is Tom Hartman, say his words, a little bit editorialized here, but true. So the fleet was this transition to the nation's largest the transition of the nation's largest fleet to these electric vehicles was, in a word, intolerable to the morbidly rich right-wingers who'd made their fortunes drilling, refining, shipping, and selling fossil fuels, particularly oil, diesel, and gasoline. The post office had to be stopped, and Republican Congressman John McHugh was just the man to do it. He'd been a member of the Koch-funded American Legislative Exchange Council, ALEC, and was deeply in the pocket of right-wing interests. So what they did was, they first, hurt this effort by imposing that the post office had to pre-fund all of its pensions, that whole debacle that sent it into financial troubles, and they were threatening to try to you're going to try to use that trouble to try to threaten to privatize the post office. Well, now after they finally dug their way mostly out from underneath that massive, it was like a $5 billion burden, the Postmaster General DeJoy, despite being strongly encouraged by the Biden administration to give the contract to a company that would, so we talked about that, give it to this other country, DeJoy essentially told Biden to go screw himself. He's going to buy the fossil fuel vehicles for the 90% instead. So really, it's just, it is all about the profitability of these gigantic oil corporations.
Yeah. And I mean, it's just really disgusting, and it just makes me very sick to think about, again, all, politicians being really, primarily concerned about their benefit and not for the country or people. And I think,
right.
That, I mean, again, we really have to dump the incumbents, right? I mean, all these politicians who get corporate money.
That's right. Dump the incumbents. Dump all the incumbents that take big money from corporations, wealthy individuals, PACs, and so on. Dump them all. And tune in Saturdays at 9 p.m. to listen to Joe Firestone and myself. We will be continuing to cover the Dump the Incumbents movement. And we're going to be talking, actually, we're going to be going over a specific list of candidates and covering them more in depth and comparing them to their progressive challengers. So with that, we are out of time. Tsukuru, thank you again for joining me. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you, Sam.
All right. Thank you to all our audience for watching. Thank you for tuning in. We'll see you tomorrow.
Okay.